Hello, this is that creepy bald guy known as Marshall Horror, and I'm here to present you with another episode of Critiquing the Critics, where I love critique the critics. Yeah, apparently that's my theme song. Pretty lame. Today's subject, vaulting. Again, hosted by Morgan, but I call them Morgles. Morgles. Well, the openings do kinda suck now. Last episode, I pretty much slammed vaulting for being uninspired, sloppy, and kind of boring. But the whole point of episode 1 was to set the stage for episode 2. So what questions should we ask about season 2? How has it improved? Why does it seem too familiar? Why is there a furry hanging out at Morgle's channel? Okay, the last one isn't particularly a relevant question, but that's still kind of weird. So let me stress this to you, my little sacrificial children. This is one of those reviews where you have to listen to what I'm saying, because you have to judge whether the right will impress you or whether the wrong will turn you away. Consider everything, folks. Don't be tools. Once again, Vaulting is a show where Morgles tackles cult films and TV shows and reviews them while also going into their backstory, trivia, etc. At least that's what he says.
For those who aren't familiar with the show, this is where we take a throwback look into your favorite TV shows, movies, and give you interesting trivia and teats behind them.
This is where Morgles becomes confused. In reality, his show has pretty much become your typical caustic critic web show, with very little trivia or backstory. At least no more than, well, your typical caustic critic web show. Morgles himself seems to have realized this and ceased making that claim in the intro. But the damage has already been done. While the technicals are not his main priority, I wish to start with these because they represent what is right and wrong with Morgles. Okay, so the audio. Yay, that staticky noise doesn't seem to be there anymore. Improvement! Video. Yay, it's less muddled and with superior lighting and much better framing. The editing, much cleaner, much sharper, and without any real faults. Oh, and the reviews are, of course, 35 to 50 minutes long. And what's even... Wait. What? 30 to 50 minutes? Bad. Bad Morgles. 50 minutes? Oh, okay. He does say that in the future he will try to keep it closer to 30 minutes. But 30? Why can't it be 20? I know this should be a red flag, but I'm sorry. I cannot forgive this. It will affect my rating. Even the nostalgia critic annoys me when he releases 30-minute long videos. I find it to be arrogantly self-indulgent, and any review, good or bad, loses steam for it. I personally blame lack of scripting for this. If Morgles scripted his reviews, he would naturally know what to say, so would spend less time thinking about what to say, and he'd spend more time on how he would say it, so it would be delivered faster. He says that he just lacks the time to do the scripts, but it takes only an hour for me at most. You'd probably save time because you'd spend less time filtering out your downtime and mistakes when you're editing these videos. Your videos would have much tighter pacing, and I wouldn't even have the temptation to do something else while listening to you. On the slight flip side, his reviews aren't as boring as they should be. They aren't exciting, but they do have a decent pace. So if you're okay with, or even like long reviews, Morgles might be for you. If you can't stand them, he might not be for you. The real focus is the humor. There are a few brands of humor to be found, but they are structured and styled in a very nostalgia critic-y way. Morgles really does not like being compared to the nostalgia critic. You know that Greek tragedy where the guy who fights his fate so much that he ends up serving it in the end? Wait, now I'm confused. What was that metaphor for again? Was he a video reviewer too? He did a review of Neverending Story 3, and when NC did it much later, he apparently almost canceled his show. He is so terrified that people will call him a ripoff that he actually considered canceling his show just because the Nostalgia Critic ended up doing a review of that same movie later on. But Morgles, seriously, people aren't dense enough that they'd call you a ripoff of the Nostalgia Critic just because you guys have reviewed the same shit. Or at least that was what I initially scripted until AVGN released that Rob the Robot review. Apparently people are that dense. But screw them. What might be considered plagiarism, though, is the identical Caustic Critic style structure, the strange cut-tos that I never found really that funny even when Nostalgia Critic did it.
And, of course, Audrey Jr. decides to stay in the shop and become a great bounding gimmick while still trying to get those plants into shape and somehow rebel so in the near future they can take over the world. Where are the words to sum this up?
Isn't that cute? But it's wrong!
Nostalgia Critic's goofy comparisons, and going into Nostalgia Critic-esque ranting mode, especially when he hypes up something we know.
You're probably thinking to yourself, there's no way they could produce a Neverending Story 3 at this point, considering the fact how they've already covered both parts in the novel, and the fact that they had an animated series out at the time that was at least getting some of the material that they never made into this film to try and, provide some sort of an expansion on the world of Fantasia as we know it, to avoid creating a sequel that'd be so idiotic and so stupid that no one would ever even appreciate it for the greatness that it was meant to be, but never was because of how it was poorly executed. For those who hated the second movie, you gotta be dead wrong to claim it as the worst sequel ever made in all of fantasy film genre history. Because yes, Virginia, there was a Neverending Story 3.
So if you're worried about it, Morgles, there might be some base to that claim. Although, for the record, while I believe Morgles is obviously derived from the Nostalgia Critic, I don't consider him a full-on ripoff. And remember, I said that it might be considered plagiarism. I really don't think that it's full-on plagiarism. He does enough of his own stuff that I do find him to be fairly unique, because a large chunk of humor is letting the jokes tell themselves. At least that's what I seem to get from them. There is often little to no punchline. He just says something and we fill in the blanks. Finding humor in that, although I'm not sure if it's intentional. I'm also not sure if that makes Morgles boringly mediocre or brilliantly innovative. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. But the successes tend to be more successful than the failure of, well, the failures. There are more traditional jokes and the occasional skit, each with mixed success.
Joe Dante, you done it again. I'm Frank Oz, and I'm here to pitch to you this prequel I have in mind for Little Shop of Horrors. A prequel? That's impossible! Ah! You'll have something to do anyway. Well, it did make a hefty profit, and the critics did love it. Well, for your information, I'm shooting down your idea, and I'm going with Joe Dante's Gremlins 2. Hopefully it'll be worthy of profit bonus points.
Rarely laugh out loud at all of this, but I am always smiling, and I often do chuckle too. Speaking of which, let's diverge a little into the character. Morgles is still kind of bland, but his confidence in front of the camera has improved, and his improv is significantly better. Although I don't think it's good enough to nix scripting, but what can you do? I just don't think Morgles is doing himself any favors by relying so much on his improv. There are too many moments where you can see he's trying to think of something funny to say, but then gives up and ends the joke with a weak resolution. If he scripted his videos, then he would think of some good jokes ahead of time and then record them. Bizarrely, Morgles is at his most entertaining when he's playing other characters, because he just seems more lively. I hate to say this because playing characters is slowly becoming more annoying and less cool, but Morgles did have some experience in acting, and maybe if he channels that same energy into simply playing himself, this would help improve his videos. With that said, some of you actually might prefer Morgles over the Nostalgia Critic. If the Nostalgia Critic's constant shrieking annoys you, you might prefer Vaulting, as Morgles is notably calm and he acts, well, normal. Furthermore, tying back with the humor, when Morgles misses a joke, you just forget it. It's harmless. I can honestly only remember a couple of misfired jokes that actually annoyed me throughout his whole reviewing career. There tends to be at least a few of these misfired jokes that I remember in a single Nostalgia Critic review. If you like Nostalgia Critic-esque reviewers, Vaulting might be for you. But if you find Nostalgia Critic to be annoying, then maybe Vaulting is also for you. For every problem the guy has, he does at least manage to have a counter. As for the information, it's pretty standard for your Caustic Critic reviewer. And because he doesn't script, he makes more mistakes than he has to. I mentioned that you should start scripting, but he does seem to have a decent sense of criticism, and he does have plenty of moments where he articulates his points perfectly. He sometimes even can combine a good point with a decent laugh. I also like how you, as in the viewer, can usually, but not always, tell that he likes a movie even if he's making fun of it. This is something few reviewers can do, especially the Nostalgia Critic. Now, with Season 1, I came close to giving that show a 2-star rating because despite its faults, it does serve a vague purpose. I almost gave Season 2 the same rating because while technically superior, it does have less of a purpose other than just being another Caustic Critic show. However, I felt that didn't do justice to the fact that he is improving and deserves plenty of credit for it. And he's becoming less and less of a clone as time goes on. So I decided to be harsher on Season 1 while being more generous on Season 2. At worst, he's just mediocre, but at best, he's decent and he does have plenty of loyal fans who seem to appreciate him much more than I do. I suspect that as time goes on, Morgels will continue to get better, and this probably won't be the last time you hear about Vaulting on Critiquing the Critics. So I've decided that I'm going to give him a 2.5 out of 4 stars. You just have to decide whether the good outweighs the bad or not. People, please consider everything and make your own decision. And Morgels, please take my advice and do what I keep telling you. Next time you kill a hooker, don't call me. Call an expert like Script. Start scripting. That's what I meant to say. The hooker part was metaphor for start scripting. My name is Marshall Horror, and I'm here to tell you those who cannot do, critique.